Well, people are always wondering how nature was conceived. Well, it was conceived in the middle of time, right in the middle of time. And that is where we are now. Nature actually realized itself in 1994. 1994 Catholic time, because nature has two basic times, and that is nature time and Catholic time. Nature time runs 10,000 times faster. So for every hour that passes here, in the rest of nature, 10,000 hours pass in that hour. So we are in the middle of time. The rebellion against nature happened 14,000 years ago, when the first humans, in a certain sense, that is, the sense of the first humans to be born in nature, of all these zillions of gargantuans of planets existing, the very first humans to be born in nature were born on this planet, because this planet was situated in the middle of time, because the gods and goddesses knew that the very first humans would rebel. After the rebellion of the first humans, the gods had used another method of approaching the humans. They approached them with cruelty. They sent them to hell immediately. And then they pulled them out of hell, and then they explained them everything. The first approach, though, hadn't to be like that, because you can't always approach people with cruelty unless you have first of all the proof that it doesn't work approaching people with kindness. So your ancestors were approached with kindness, and your ancestors came from the species called the Ebonines. Now the Ebonines came from the monkeys. You see, what actually happened was the succession of the species. Evolution is an impossible and ridiculous idea. You can't have beings walking around with placards on them saying, "Please don't eat me, I'm handicapped," for generations after generations, for 1,000 years. You can't have that happening at all. The beings would be all grotesque and deformed and incapable of defending themselves, incapable of living. So what happens is that one species is born after the other. And the final species to be born is the human species, which is born from the Ebonine species. Now, of course, you all set fire to your father's species, to your fathers and mothers, after rebelling against the gods. You wanted to eliminate all trace of your ancestry. You were following the Catholic plan. You see, the Catholic entity and any Catholic entities within that are all enemies of nature. Cancer, for example, is a Catholic entity. Viruses are Catholic entities. Now, The good entities are called catatonic entities. Now I know that means something else on the Earth, because you have misinterpreted the English language in a great way. The English language is actually innate in a human being, and when you were born 14,000 years ago, you instinctively knew how to speak English. All species are born with their innate language, and the innate language of the human being is English. So, you rebelled. You followed a young woman of 15 years old, whose name actually was Eva. There were 400 of you, but this woman, who was the most beautiful of all, rebelled against the gods and started to insult them. And when you are insulting people who are a million times more intelligent than you, then you gradually transform yourself. And Eva started to use the power of evil. Well, Eva caused havoc in all of what you call the universe, which we call nature. And she caused havoc for zillions of gargantuans of light years. She wreaked absolute havoc for an hour. Then a few hours later she leapt forwards in time and came and tried to influence me. I met her in 1994 and I won. I conned her for 3 weeks that she could influence me. She wasn't actually present during those 3 weeks. She had leapt back in time and she thought she could control me from the beginning of the history of the human race here. And she couldn't, no, because I sucked her through time, and I sucked her through my body, and I steamed her out of my head and sent her to the most hideous hell that is actually possible, which is called the rollover. You roll over. If you roll over for eternity, well, you have the most hideous, nauseating feelings imaginable that get a zillion times worse each second for eternity. Well, that's the episode for today, and I will be explaining more things in other short videos.